Kentucky basketball should be able to pick up a win against the Vanderbilt Commodores tomorrow, but with the chaotic nature of these Cats, there's no telling what could happen in Rupp.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, writer for the College Notebook. But on this podcast, we take a dive into all things Kentucky athletics. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Well, take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today over at nissanusa.com. On today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be previewing Kentucky basketball's matchup with the Vanderbilt Commodores. Second game of this series this season. First go around, it was a blowout in Nashville. Can Kentucky continue that trend again against VU? Well, with the way that Kentucky played offense and defense against the Razorbacks, there is one thing that has been abundantly clear. It's going to be a chaotic game regardless of how good or bad the opponent is. So we're going to dive into the matchup today, give our thoughts on Vanderbilt, what they've done since that Kentucky game, how Kentucky's heading into this one, and we'll give a final score prediction at the end of the show. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. I want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribed to the show. And if you're listening on podcast, I would appreciate it if you subbed there as well. So, all right, let's go ahead and get into it. Kentucky versus Vanderbilt. As I mentioned, should Kentucky win this game? Yeah, they should. KenPom gives the Wildcats a 97% chance to win this game. The computer model projects UK to win this game by 20. 89-69 is the final score projection. But as we saw against Arkansas, yes, the Cats can score against bad competition, but their defense sometimes does not get up and does not stay up until the very end of the game, whenever things kind of get down to the wire. The Vanderbilt Commodores are a very bad basketball team. There is no other way to put it. Both on offense and on defense, they struggle with a lot of different things. But that does not prevent Vanderbilt from being completely down and out in this game. Let's talk about what the Commodores do well. So last season, Vanderbilt was 22-15. They had a top 30 offense and an above average defense, and they were doing a lot of different things really well. But the big thing that made this team click, that Jerry Stackhouse still sort of has within his personnel this season, even though Vanderbilt is 8-21 and not 22-15 like they were a year ago, is they have guys that can create in isolation. That's what Jerry Stackhouse runs. That's what he likes with his system, is he likes different dominant ball handlers that can create things in isolation and, more importantly, draw fouls. Vanderbilt has a couple different players like that. You look at Ezra Manjon and Tyrin Lawrence as two of the most used players in this starting five. Jason Rivera-Torres, a player that got a lot of love for some reason on the broadcast. Last time these two teams played, I believe he went 0 of 6 from the floor, though. Also, one of the most utilized players on this team. But those are all different guys that don't have phenomenal assist rates, do not distribute the basketball particularly well, but they do score in isolation. They're able to drive in these different horn sets that Vanderbilt likes to run. They're able to get to the rim, and they're able to try something. They're able to try and draw fouls. They're able to try and kick it out for maybe some open shots, something that Kentucky has been susceptible to, saw in the most recent contest against the Razorbacks. But Vanderbilt, I think the positive thing that you can take away from this team, if you're going to say something, is they don't turn the ball over on offense. They get to the foul line, and they have players that can create in isolation. And they've proven that recently. Actually, before their loss this weekend to LSU earlier last weekend, they did defeat Arkansas on the road 85-82. Was just their third conference win of the season. Ezra Manjon went for 22 points on 7 of 15 from inside the arc, 1 of 1 from outside. Tyrin Lawrence had 21 points and was 10 of 14 from the foul line. Manjon, by the way, 5 of 7 from the charity stripe in that contest. So you see right there with Lawrence and Manjon, those two lead kind of guards, they are able to do things on occasion. Now, that's probably where the positives end for the Commodores, but I'll say it here, and I'm probably going to reiterate it later on in the show. Arkansas has 3 or 4 different guards that I said in the preview episode of the game before Kentucky played the Hogs. In the preview episode for that game, I said, look, statistically, they are inefficient. They're not good from the floor, but they're still talented. And Eric Musselman has given Kentucky problems in the past. What's to say in this game that Ezra Manjon, Tyrin Lawrence, another guard here, Evan Taylor, somebody like Jason Rivera-Torres coming off the bench, Vin Allen Lubin, their leading scoring forward. What's to say these guys don't just click against Kentucky's defense? Kentucky doesn't get up. They're not focused. They're not locked in on defense from the jump. And Vanderbilt's able to make this a game, not just for a little bit of the contest, but for the entire time. It's very possible. This Kentucky team, super high ceiling when they're dialed in. But whenever you have games like the one against Arkansas, it really does make you pause and think, how much is Kentucky looking forward to that game against Tennessee and Knoxville this weekend? Are they focused on the Commodores? Are they ready to take on the challenge? Because let me tell you what Vanderbilt's going to do. They're going to give it their all. They're going to do everything they can to try and pick up this win. Do you know why we know that? It's because that's what they did last year when Kentucky, at one point, 20-9, 11-5 in the SEC, had 2 more games, and they were expected to win against Vanderbilt, and they were expected to lose on the road at Arkansas to close out the regular season. Kentucky lost by 2 against Vanderbilt in what was just an isolation game, pretty much, for Vanderbilt's a couple of their different players. If I'm not mistaken, Jordan Wright, he had an insane game off the bench, 23 points. Tyrin Lawrence had 21 points in this contest. Again, they've got guys that can fill it up if they get hot. And then, by the way, Kentucky lost in the first round of the SEC tournament to Vanderbilt. So rough go there for UK last year against the Commodores. And by the way, Arkansas lost to Kentucky at the end of the regular season. So they split 1-1, but not in the way that you would have expected. This team is chaotic, especially so this season. So I understand that Vanderbilt may not do a ton of things well. I understand that they may struggle in a lot of different areas, and we're going to get into it here in a second. But there's nothing stopping any rational person from pointing out, hey, yeah, Vanderbilt stinks, but it also would not be the most surprising thing if Kentucky dropped this game. It just would. I thought the Arkansas game was going to be closer than the line said it would be. I think this game will probably end up being closer. We'll talk more about matchups. But if we're just talking about the positives, things that could bounce Vanderbilt's way, they could win this thing. They've got the players to give Kentucky problems. It's kind of where it starts and ends, though, for the Vanderbilt Commodores and what they do well. Let's talk about what they struggle with here in just a second. Before I dive into that, though, I do want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. You can get buckets with your first bet over on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all of your favorite NBA players or former Kentucky Wildcats in the NBA, or different NBA teams. If you are just a fan of one of them, you can get in on quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. So you need to visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today. Shoot your shot. Again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Shoot your shot with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, continuing along here on the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Again, I appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you are listening on podcast and you have not subscribed to the show, First of all, appreciate you checking us out today. Please subscribe if you are interested. It's going to be a really fun end to the season here over at Locked On Kentucky. I am certain the Wildcats will make it as chaotic as they possibly can. Really interested to see how things play out. Going to be talking a lot about the tournament here over these next couple of weeks. Only 12 days until Selection Sunday. And I need to remember, I just remembered this just now, I need to go ahead and set up a bracket pool because last year, I think we had like 50 people in her, and that was awesome. Thank you so much, by the way, to you guys who did that. But we're definitely going to do that again. We're going to run that back. So let me not forget that. I'll make a note about that before I upload this episode here. But if you're not subbed on YouTube or on podcast, please subscribe. If you want to go check out the College Notebook, it's a free Substack where I'm kind of writing my thoughts about college football and basketball. Got stats, analysis, all different kinds of things over there. Massive article putting every single college basketball contender into a tier list. Go sub up. It's free. Just enter your email, and it's free to join and read. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. All right, so Kentucky versus Vanderbilt, big matchup for the Wildcats because they cannot let down in a spot like this. They still have a chance. There is still a world where Kentucky ties at the top of the SEC at 13-5. There is a world where that happens. But they got to get this one, though. I know a lot of people are going to be talking about that Tennessee game, and that one's going to be really, really tough. But this is a gimme. This is a game against a team that is not good, that Kentucky has to focus up and beat. Let's talk about some of the things that the Commodores struggle with, and it's going to be a lot to do with what they struggled with whenever they played Kentucky. As of right now, the Vanderbilt Commodores, if you go over to KenPom, it is my favorite website on the planet. You can look at Vanderbilt's adjusted efficiencies on both offense and defense. They rank out of 362 Division I teams, 213th on offense and 210th on defense in adjusted efficiency. That is really bad. And if you look at conference-only statistics, they have the 14th, the worst offense in the SEC, and the 13th, the second to worst defense in this conference. They play with the second slowest pace on offense. Their average 16.4 seconds per possession on defense is the second quickest in this league, which means it takes them a long time to score. It does not take opponents a long time to score. They are ineffective on both sides of the ball, and it just gets worse whenever you start scrolling down here. Vanderbilt is one of the worst shooting teams in the SEC, second worst actually when you look at effective field goal percentage. They do not grab offensive rebounds. They're 12th in the SEC in that category. They are second to last in 3-point, 2-point, and free throw percentage. So they are bad at all three phases. So they get to the foul line, like we mentioned earlier. Statistically, they do a decent job at drawing fouls and getting most of their points from the charity stripe. But I think part of it has to do with the fact that they are just statistically inefficient from the floor. That's something that we don't really talk about when we discuss these matchups and these field goal percentages, is sometimes when you're dealing with a really bad team or just a bad offense in general, you're going to see them do a decent job at drawing fouls and getting free throw attempts as opposed to field goal attempts and getting points from that. And you'll see that reflected in point distribution. You'll see that reflected in FTA divided by FGA. But it's probably because of the fact that you'll see these statistics here with fouls in the charity stripe. It's probably because of the fact that they just do not shoot well from the floor. They shoot less than 27% from three in conference play, 28.1% on the year. They shoot less than 47% from inside the arc in SEC play, 47.3% on the season. They just don't do a whole lot in terms of pace or efficient shooting. And then on top of all of this, I mentioned earlier that Jerry Stackhouse likes guys that can create an isolation. You see it reflected in their numbers because for forever now, Vanderbilt has just not been great at distributing the basketball, getting a ton of assists, and they are 346th out of 362 D1 teams in assist rate this season. Not in terms of total assist. I like looking more at percentages and how it stacks up against the conference more than I do just raw numbers like, oh, great, you grabbed 10 rebounds. I think it's more interesting to reflect on what the conference is good at and what they are good, what the national perspective is good at from a percentages standpoint, which is why I love KenPom so much. So assist rate, I think, is a little bit more accurate reflection of how they're able to affect the game on the offensive side of the basketball. Because I'll say this real quick. Vanderbilt has one of the slower paces in the entire nation on offense. They could still have a really high assist rate and not get a ton of assists per game because more time per possession means less possessions, unless they're just creating a ton of turnovers on defense or they play really, really quick defense. You're just going to have less total assists per game. It's why I like KenPom so much. I'm sorry for the mini rant there, but yeah, offense, just not that good. They don't have like a phenomenal front court presence. They don't have a guy in their rotation that's taller than 6'9", and it's a freshman in Carter Lang. Vin Allen Lubin averages over 11 points per game, 6'8", 230 sophomore. That's been their starting center for the most part this season. Actually, for the entire season, excuse me. I thought he had at one point stepped out of their rotation. But yeah, they're not tall. They don't play offense well. They play defense just as bad. They give up 37.5% from three, which is 348th nationally. That's where Kentucky went against the Commodores this last go-round. It was a lot of run and dunk, man. Get your Giannis jokes in. It was a lot of running down the court and dunking the ball, but Kentucky also shot 57% from three, 15 of 26, which is not what you're going to think of when you go and look at the highlights of this game. You're not going to think about the fact that Kentucky just went ballistic from three, specifically Antonio Reeves and Rob Dillingham, but they did. And that's where Vanderbilt really, really struggles so far this season, is they just don't do a great job of holding teams and their pace and their three-point shooting and their distribution. So all of this pretty much here is stacking up to say, yeah, you know what? I can actually understand why KenPom thinks Kentucky's going to win this game by 20. It's on the road. It's in Rupp. Kentucky, I think, is a very bad matchup for the Commodores. And I think a lot of teams are just really bad matchups for the Commodores. But you would expect Kentucky to blow this game out of the water, right? Well, let's talk about that a little further. Let's actually project what's going to happen in this game. Let's give some final score predictions here in just a second. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things just a little further? Have you ever wondered what adventure could be around the next corner? Well, our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. You can check out the 2024 Nissan Rogue. It is perfect for city drives and great escapes. It's got class-exclusive Google built-in. It is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone, because Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is also the perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure. Nissan's incredible lineup doesn't just include the Rogue, but it also includes the 2024 Nissan Armada. It will change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. It is beautiful. It is powerful. You can tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Both are phenomenal SUVs, the Rogue and the Armada. You can take the Rogue, the Pathfinder, or the Armada and go find your next big adventure. You can check all of those cars out over at nissanusa.com. Again, check all of those SUVs out over at nissanusa.com. All right, wrapping up the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. So we're going through Kentucky versus Vanderbilt, second go-around, a game that most people may just kind of glance over, may say, oh, well, Kentucky's going to win that game, whatever. It's an easy way to close out senior day for the Wildcats, which is going to be a big day for Antonio Reeves, obviously. I don't even want to think about him not playing for Kentucky anymore, so let's move on from that real quick. But I'm concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, consider me concerned for this contest. As we discussed, Kentucky blew the doors off of Vanderbilt in Nashville, 109-77 in case you don't remember how that game went. 109 points. Reeves had 24. Justin Edwards had 17. Dillingham had 20. Bradshaw had 12. Burks had 13 off the bench. Jordan Burks had 13 points and 5 rebounds off the bench. The man doesn't get in the rotation all that much, and he was able to go out there and ball out, as he typically does, by the way, whenever he gets in. Might note that. Zvonimir Ivicic had 11 points, 7 rebounds, 6 of them offensive. He had 2 assists. He had a block. He had a steal. He did foul out, but Ivicic went crazy. Sheppard had 5 steals, 3 assists, 1 block, 5 rebounds, and had 12 points and shot inefficiently. 6 points. Shot inefficiently, but did everything else extremely well. I mean, Kentucky just had everyone go off. So this should be a blowout, right? Vanderbilt stinks. They don't do anything well. Well, again, I think this is going to be tough for 2 reasons. First of all, like I mentioned, Vanderbilt's guard play. If Kentucky does not start this game hot on defense, they're going to struggle. They have to go out there and throw the first punch. Secondly, I am concerned about Kentucky because of their youth, their mental fortitude, and their ability to continue to win games even whenever it's against a lesser opponent that kind of gets out to a lead. Like, right? They've been able to do that over and over and over again. They've been able to kind of let games slip away. Oh, yeah, but we're better. They've been able to get down by double digits. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, actually, we're better. You got down by 9 against Arkansas with a few minutes left. Oh, no, looks like Kentucky's going to lose. Here's 5 freshmen coming in, the game's over. You lose. Kentucky drops 111 in the process. This feels like one of those games where it's like Vanderbilt's like, oh, Vanderbilt's up by what? They're up by 15 at one point in the first half? Oh, no, Kentucky wins by 10. I really do hope that they're able to buck trends and just go out there for one game against a team they should beat the snot out of and just focus up. Just win the game from start to finish, close it out. On senior day for Reeves, go out there and blow it out. It's what they should do. I think it's going to be closer than 20. I really hope it's more than 20, just to be honest with you. I don't think it will be. I think it'll be less. I'm going to say Kentucky wins this one. I'm going to say they hit that 90 mark. I'm right there with KenPom. I'm going to say they win this one 90-75. I think they win by 15. It's going to be a little closer. Maybe a little closer than that, honestly. So let me know what you think in the comments below. How will Kentucky attack this game? Do you think they'll be able to play some better defense in this matchup? What do you think the important things are for the Wildcats to do on both sides of the ball? How do you feel about senior day for UK? Let me know about all of it in the comments below. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and God bless.